Hey guys, CB Super. Today we're going to be going over how to make a cartoon water drop effect inside of DaVinci Resolve 16.1. This actually came from a request from Kayla. Kayla asked if we could figure out how to do a splashing water in a kind of a cartoony format. Unfortunately, DaVinci doesn't have like any preloaded motion graphics that would really assist with this. There's a couple different ways we could go about doing this. One would just be to simply use a paint node, and we could actually paint this effect pretty easily and animate it, but I kind of already did a video on that. If you want to go check out that video, it just shows how to use a paint node and how to animate it to get kind of a very similar effect that we're going to be doing today. But I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. I'm actually going to use this this stock clip art that I found. It's a free download, and the nice thing about it is it already has its own transparency, so you don't actually have to do any keying out or too much roto work, really. I'll also put the link in the description. Again, it's a free download, so if you guys want to go grab that asset, you can actually play along on this time. Okay, so inside of DaVinci Resolve, I've kind of just added it to this other stock footage clip that I have. And you'll notice I just have this raindrop, this drop that's just coming down. It's hitting the umbrella, and it's got a nice little cartoony splash to it. You know what, really quickly I'll just kind of show you what the Fusion node tree looks like before we actually get in here and build our own. You see this big long string? That's just a bunch of masks. Couple different nodes. You can see we have some resizes and transforms, and we merge a bunch of things together. And then we have another secondary animation tree, but we don't even really need to do that. It's really not too many nodes, and it's not too complicated. There's a little bit of spline work in here, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I mean, just want to show you that it's not very complicated. It'll be quite easy once we start getting into this. So let's go into the media pool, and I'm just going to click on the same clip and bring this down here. I'm probably going to shorten it up a bit though. Just going to go ahead and jump right into Fusion, and we're going to go ahead and rebuild this entire effect. In my media pool, I have this little clip art, and we'll just kind of load it up to see what it is. So I chose this one because it looked very cartoony, but two, it also had all these little water droplets that we could play with and animate separately. As you can see, they're already not connected to this, so I don't have to go into Photoshop and edit this at all. I can pretty much use this clip as it is, and you'll notice it's already on its own transparent background, which is nice. It is a peculiar size. It's 942 by 870, so it's not even like a true square, but you know, it's kind of close enough to a square where we would probably be able to recreate this. Our original clip size is 1920 by 1080. So one thing you'll notice is once we start to mask things out on this 942 by 870, it's not gonna apply correctly. It's gonna be working off of a 1080p comp, so it's just not gonna add up right. So first thing we're gonna need to do is we're actually gonna need to come over here, shift space, type in resize, and go ahead and add that. Now what that's gonna do is it's gonna make it look really weird, but at least it is now in a 1080p comp. We can actually play around with this a little bit. Since we kind of squished it from the top down, we're gonna have to come in here, and all we got to do is transform this back. We can play with the sizing. We could try to get it relatively close to what we want, but to be honest, it'd be kind of easier just to throw in a merge node and merge these two together. And now we can see exactly what size this needs to be, because all we have to do is match it up with the original comp size. And you can kind of come in here and you can get really close, and you'll see, like if we were to go too far in, you'll see two of them, versus when you only see one image, that means you pretty much have it dead on. And so that looks pretty good. Check it up top here, looks good. Yeah, it looks good all around. So that's kind of just an easy way to cheat and make something the same size without having to go in and, you know, resize it mathematically. Alright, so now we have it. It's on a 920 by 1080 comp, and we have it sized to, you know, roughly the equivalent aspect ratio size that it was before we did the resize node. Now we can start separating all these little bits, all these little water drops, and just kind of separate them from this this larger splash element. With this click, it's really easily to just, if I come over here and just to the right of this main icon, if I click Apply Mask Inverted, this is going to help out just a little bit when I start removing all these little pieces here. So if I click on the mask icon, you'll see nothing really shows up, but I can go ahead and start making masks, and once I connect them, they'll disappear, which is really cool because now I'll know exactly which ones I've edited out and which ones I haven't. So after you've made that one mask, just go ahead and keep pressing the polygon mask tool and just keep making masks. And I'm probably just gonna fast forward this just so you're not staring at me clicking away for an hour or however long this takes me. It's probably actually realistically only gonna take a few minutes, but alright, so that's pretty much that. I've got them all masked out, and you'll see if I select all of them, you can see where the masks were. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and Command C and Command V to bring this up here, just so I can have both of these. So now I'll have one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to bring it down here. We can kind of just bring this back up. So each one of these masks is just a piece that has been removed. I made this copy so I can actually kind of move these over, because I actually want to pipe this into this media as well to separate this splash. So now I can kind of rename these, you know, to what they look like. So this would be my main splash. This will be, and this will be, just go ahead and unclick that Apply Mask Inverted, and then this will be our, I don't know, drops. So now if we bring them both out, you can see we've got the splash and we've got the drops. Now we just have to add these resizes and the transform. Command C, Command V, and we'll just bring those over here and connect this one in here. That way this will be back on the 1080 clip, and now this will also be on a 1080 clip, and they're both sized correctly. So we have, so you might be thinking, okay, well now we need to animate them, and you're correct, we do need to animate them, but the problem is that what do we animate? So if I come over here and I animate, I can't really animate this drops. It doesn't really give you any kind of option to, you know, make it larger, make it smaller, and you definitely don't want to mess with these masks too much. We really don't want to play too much around with the resize, and we could come in here and we could animate these. But the problem with that is that we don't necessarily want to animate this too much, because it's just not a very good way to work. You've already used this transform to resize it to make it to the correct aspect ratio. So we're actually going to want to create another transform node. And these will be our animation nodes, if you will. In fact, we can even rename them. This could be maybe drop animation and splash animation. That way when we look at these later in the Spline Editor up here, it'll be very apparent which one we're going to want to animate. We can kind of look over here and we see, okay, well, she's walking along, maybe we want to hit her right when she gets in the center of the frame. We're right about there. So we'll just say frame 60. We'll start with the splash, because the splash is actually the first thing that is going to appear. And with the splash, we know we want it to, the animation to be, we want it to probably be like, you know, not extremely labored out. Doesn't want to be too long of an animation. I think right around 10 frames is probably pretty good. So maybe right around, if 60 is right where we want it to start splashing, we can go ahead and size it down. We're probably going to want to size it all the way down so you can't see it, because it's going to start as nothing, right? So we can go ahead and put a keyframe there with the size all the way down, and then we could go, let's go 10 frames. Let's make it a little bit longer. All right, and so now back to the original size. Actually, you know what? Let's make it a little bit smaller than original size. And then, and so with almost all animations, you're going to have some kind of bounce or some kind of follow through, like 3 frames. Make it a little bit bigger, and then it will die out over another, let's do 3 frames. And let's see what that looks like. Okay. Just looking at this, 10 frames is going to be way too long. But you know what? I think we'll tidy that up in the Spline Editor, just because I want to have enough room to move here. Alright, so with that set, let's jump over here. And so if this starts at 60 and it gets bigger, right around 70, maybe right around 70, we'll go ahead and start animating this other side, and we'll just make this one 5 frames. And it will get kind of bigger here. And then we'll go another 3 frames. It'll get a little bit bigger. We don't want it to go off frame. Now, this one, instead of getting smaller, what it's going to do is it's actually going to just disappear. So let's really quickly, let's go ahead and just merge these two together. And we'll put the splash in the background and the drops in the foreground and just kind of see what we have going on here. Alright, so as it stands right now, this is actually looking pretty good. So the timing is off, but we're going to fix that timing. We're going to go ahead and fix that timing right now, actually. So let's go ahead and get out of the inspector and over into the Spline Editor. We're going to start with the splash animation, and we're going to go ahead and just, this little button over here is zoom to fit. So wherever your animation is, it's just going to zoom to fit it. Okay, so we know that that was really weird, right? But we didn't really like that too much. We knew we wanted it to be faster. Now, one of the first things I'll usually do is I'll come and I'll just grab all these points. And if you just hit Shift S, it's going to smoothen them all out. You can do this manually if you wanted to. You just come in here and start manipulating the handles. You can also come over here and just hit this little button over here that looks like a curve, and that's just going to smooth out whatever you've selected. Now, what we've done here though is that we also have this other keyframe, and we can add more keyframes just by clicking over here. You see, say if I want to add a keyframe here, I can. I'm going to Control Z that because I don't want to add a keyframe. And I can also adjust and move these handles. What this is going to do is, this is time, right? This is time here, and then this is distance or some kind of value. So if I want it to take longer to do something, I can go ahead and I can belabor this by just dragging this handle outward. And now we'll take a look at what that does to the animation here. And now that I look at this, I'm going to say that I probably don't even need this keyframe here anymore. Let's take a look at this. That's a little weird. Let's just kind of like make this a little bit more correct. Now what this is this is the follow through, right? So I could mess with that follow through a little bit. I kind of like that. And this is the part. This is like the artistic taste, right? This is just something that you're going to have to play with whatever footage you're putting it with in order to see if your animation is going to be, I don't know. It doesn't need to be believable. This is a cartoon animation. But you also want it to be somewhat conform to, you know, the typical properties of animation, which, you know, you don't want it to be too linear. You want to have a little bit of exaggeration. You definitely want to have some squash and some stretch if possible, which, you know, we're trying to instill a little bit by just having some overthrow here and a little bit of bounce. I can also speed up this departure. Yeah, I kind of like that by making it come off a little bit faster, so it goes away a little faster, the big splash. It kind of gives the outer splash or the drops a little bit more energy. When I click on it a second time, you'll notice that these turn into like little squares. And the nice thing about that is that they can't be edited, so you can't mess them up, but you can still see where your animation is taking place. So you'll see all these other polygons on here. These are just if you were to have animated your mask. So you'll notice there's no values in any of these. The only other value should be in this drop animation, because this is the other animation that we did. Now again, we can come over here and we can just smoothen these out and just see where they lie. I think that's gonna work. I might want this to start a little bit sooner though. I'm just zooming in, command, and scrolling in with my mouse wheel. So I might want to move this up just a little bit sooner so it starts a little sooner. Yeah, you know, and that kind of works. And so let's jump in here real quick and let's see what it looks like when we So in this merge, so our drops animation was the foreground. And remember, a merge node merges a foreground into a background. So inside of a merge node, you're gonna have this blend. And the blend, if you turn the blend all the way to the 0, your foreground will disappear. So that's kind of what we want, right? So we want our foreground, which in this case is our drops, to disappear, and we want them to disappear at the end of their animation. So if we go over to the animation here, we can see that the end of the animation is 75. So what we could do is we can actually jump back over to the merge. We can drop the blend all the way down, hit the keyframe, because this is what we want the end to be. And then we can just use the left arrow to go back maybe 1 or 2 frames and turn the blend all the way back up. Okay, so it's okay. I definitely would sit around and play with this quite a bit more. In fact, but you know what? For sake of time, I'm just gonna go with that for now. So animation is not, I mean, I hate to say this, but animation is not something that you're gonna learn through this video. I can show you how to do this, but I mean, you're gonna have to practice and play with this, and there's definitely a lot of foundations to learn when dealing with animation. Alright, and so the last part of this is just gonna make another droplet. So what I could do is I could just actually just Command C this, and then Command V over here. Alright, so we will need to make, maybe we'll just grab like this one right here. And we can just use this little ellipse tool here. Oh. And that's fine. We'll just do that. Alright, it gets resized, and then it gets transformed back to the original size. And now we're actually going to clear this out completely. And this will be our animation. Just to make it a little bit easier on ourselves, one thing it might be advantageous to do is we're actually going to move this up to right here. That way when we come over to this transform, it's going to be in the center. And I know I told you like these transforms are only meant to do like one thing, but today I'm going to do 2 things, because 2 things can be done as well. Move it over here to the center. Alright, cool. So now that that's in the center, now that I move this transform, it's just going to be a little bit easier to move this one raindrop. Alright, so this is our media. Let's just time this off of our actual raindrop. Yeah, that'll work. At least I think it'll work. We'll see. Alright. Okay, that looks terrible. And the reason that looks terrible is because of this part right here. That we would have probably been better off doing another merge and delete. Let's see. So right here. Alright, let's go back to our splash animation and then the splash merge. So I want to have control over this splash. I don't like it getting smaller the way that it does. I've decided that even though I did that in the original, I actually want to come in here and I want to change it up just a little bit. And I can do that. It's my shell. And this is how I'm going to do it. Alright, so I've got this background node, and I'm really just using this so that I can use a merge node. And then I come over to this background and I can turn this alpha all the way down. It's going to treat this merge node as a form of like an opacity animation slider, which is kind of the easiest way to think about it. So if I blend this in, I can control the opacity a little bit easier, which is exactly what we want. As this gets bigger, as soon as it gets to its height, I think I'm just going to do this. And then I'm going to go back 1 frame, and I'm going to turn it all the way up. And I'm basically just going to turn it off. And let's see what that looks like. That's got to look better. Anything's got to look better than the way that it looks now. Okay, that looks a lot better. We can actually have the splash come in a little sooner though, now that we've changed that animation a little bit. Let's just move this entire thing over just a couple frames now. Now let's take a look at what we got. Okay, so the animation is good enough. Let's come in here and let's do our resizing now. So we'll look at this one, but I'll come into the transform. Okay, so, I mean, we don't, at the height, okay, let's go ahead and come into the inspector, and now we can bring this down to whatever we want this to be, however big we want this splash to be. We'll say that's probably big enough. All right, so splash, okay, that's great. Now we can, if we want to throw on that motion blur, now would be the time. Quality all the way up, looks good. Let's come into the rain animation. All right, so now we can actually size this one down as well. We can size this little guy down just a little bit. I mean, we still want it to be comical. It is still cartoonish. So it might seem like we're spending an awful lot of time on timing, but you'll find that timing is kind of everything in animation. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, so I kind of want to move the entire animation. And in order to move that animation over just a little bit, come after the merge here and then shift space and yet another transform node. But we're actually going to want to swap these merges. Let's bring this one over here though. Bring those over just a little bit. Merge in, merge out. Merge here. Okay. And now, and that'll probably work. And that's pretty good right there. So now we'll just let it all render out, and okay, that looks pretty good. And we could throw in a little bit of the motion blurs. You guys can do that on your own. I mean, that's, you know, this is not a fast process. It just depends on how good you want your animation to be. And yes, I know this seems like it was a pretty complicated process, but I mean, if you look at it in all reality, all we did is we took one picture and we cut it up a few different ways using some polygon masks. We resized it just to make it correct, and then we transformed it to make it back to the way that it should look. And then we just animated all of those pieces. We just merged them in. And then we just kept moving it around within our footage. Of course, we could have just taken that, you know, we could have probably just used this water splash here, and we could have, you know, if you guys wanted to. I mean, you can still do this, you know, like, you know, I don't mind if you guys want to use this. I mean, you could have just, you know, basically did this where, you know, you could just bring this in here, and now you can either, you know, do like a, I don't know, you can even just come in here to the inspector and just, I don't know, throw on like a lighten, or probably a screen. Maybe Command C, Command V, maybe just duplicate it. You know, you could have done that and just saved yourself, I don't know, 2 hours of time, 3 hours of time, however long this took. Alright, so that's pretty much it for me. If you guys have any questions, please leave them down in the comments. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.